Welcome to Underdog Rising with your host, Wade Posehn, where we ignite your journey from humble beginnings to greatness through inspiring tales of top executives and entrepreneurs. In this episode of Underdog Rising, we are joined by Jason Young, a seasoned executive and co-founder of Level Up with Ethan Evans. With a career spanning leadership roles at Amazon, Dentsu, and Universal McCann, Jason now helps professionals develop high-performance habits and actionable career strategies. His wealth of experience in scaling businesses and mentoring leaders makes him a valuable voice for anyone aiming to elevate their career. Jason, thank you so much for spending your time with us today.
Great to be here, Wade. I'm excited.
You did start your career with several internships, right? How did those experiences shape your career and contribute to your success?
Yeah, the short answer is I had no idea what I wanted to do with my life. So one way for me to figure out was try as many internships as possible, right? So in high school, I interned at a mortgage company on the accounting team. Too boring for me. They called it the bean counters for a reason, right? I didn't understand it back then. Then in college, I was pre-law, communication major, thought I wanted to be a lawyer. And then I tested internships with PR firms, marketing firms. I even worked for the USC Viterbi Engineering School for like data input, etc. And then I landed in a summer internship with Sony Pictures, the movie studio, specifically in their digital marketing department. And this was like 2009, I think. When social media was just starting. So everything was brand new. Twitter was brand new. Facebook was pretty new, etc. So it was Wild West territory online with marketing, but it was a lot of fun. You talk about ambiguity and rolling up your sleeves and testing and being flexible or flexing your creative muscles, and then that's what eventually led to my job at Universal McCann, because Sony Pictures movie was a client of Universal McCann. And then I got along well with the executives there, et cetera. So they recommended me.
That's incredible. And then just sort of a point I'd like to touch on based off of what you just mentioned. Did you find having multiple internships helpful in the sense of guiding you throughout your career so that way you could test, because some people just go straight into an industry versus like testing out a few to see where their passion actually lies?
Yeah, it helped me. It acted as a no filter to quickly identify what I didn't want to do. And then eventually I fell in love with like the digital marketing space. So that was like a passion / job for me. So short answer, yes.
When we're young and we're all starting out, often at times there's a few mistakes that we have throughout our career. They're learning lessons. We evolve and we get stronger and better over time. But what's one mistake that you made early in your career that young professionals can learn from and avoid?
I would say the thing I could have done the best in my career, and this still rings true to today, is maintaining better contact with the people I worked with, including the senior executives throughout my career. I do an okay job, but I think you can almost mechanize it so that the communication is more frequent. What you almost want it to be expected by the other people, right? Because, I know quite a lot of senior executives who are SVPs, EVPs, CEOs, C-suites at big companies now. And if I got to a cadence where they expected 1 to 2 emails a year from Jason, that would give me a very easy excuse just to continue it, right? But if you haven't talked to someone in 7 years, 10 years, emailing them out of the blue is, it's almost like, what do you want?
Yes, exactly. Yeah. And it's also more of a challenge because now you're not so top of mind, right? Like, of course, it'll trigger and they'll have to think and be like, oh, yes, I remember this individual, especially if it's been multiple years. But to your point, if you stay on top of it, then you're relevant. It's an easy ask, right? Or an engage, especially if you go onto something new to bring people into the awareness phase of what you're trying to get out into the market.
If I had to add to that, one thing I was good at, but I feel like I could have been much better at, and Ethan talks about this too in his career, is I was bold and I took bold steps and I made bold moves. But when you're in your 20s and early 30s, I would recommend people to be even more fearless. Take the big bold step, raise your hand to take on the new big project, deliver it, Or if that includes pivoting a career, going to a new company, take that step. But be fearless. Have the courage to do what you think feels right.
On that same note, right? I think it's obviously one thing to say it and another thing to actually do it. Do you have any advice for those listening today if they are a little bit more reserved? How can they go out and actually build that confidence to keep taking those bold moves so they can accelerate their career?
I get asked this question a lot, and I've been thinking about it. I'm the type of person, I like to give as realistic answers as possible, so no like really pithy theoretical stuff. So I've came to the conclusion, for most people out there, I would peg it 80% of the people, the candid, straight truth answer is you have to build a financial safety net first. Whatever that number means to you. Identify that number, because once you have that in the bank, then you're going to feel more emboldened to take those moves because you can, right? I'm not going to sugarcoat it and say, yeah, if you haven't hit your number, you're not even close. Yeah, doing something risky and scary is scary. So I would say aim for that first, right? So be savvy from a savings investment standpoint. And then number two, focus on what you want to do is you want to take a step back and you always want to see, okay, if I do this next move, am I in the part of the business or industry that is in control of what matters to that company? In other words, you don't want to be an overhead, or you don't want to be seen as a cost center. You want to be seen as a profit center. You want to drive what matters to that business. So make sure you're in that position because it gives you more leverage and it usually gives you more resources. And when business grows, that's how you get hyper growth in a career.
Yeah, that's an exceptional point. And for those that might, be younger in their career and they might not have access to like P&Ls or budgets, et cetera, with those conversations, what are your recommendations? Do you feel like they should ask? So then that way they are kind of guiding their choices throughout their career?
For those young in their careers, so let's peg it at like 7 years or less, right? So pretty early. What you want to do is you want to try to find a senior, it doesn't have to be an executive, but a senior leader, tenured sponsor. Someone who you can develop a working relationship because of the work you deliver to them or add value to them. And this could be someone within the same team or org, or someone outside of it that you just help on the side, right? Like, for example, if you are in digital marketing, but this person's in engineering, can you help them better understand the voice of the customer from a marketing standpoint, right? Things like that. But you want this person to basically be a champion for you internally. So when things come up, when you're not in the room, they could be your voice of support. So again, it's about adding value to that. I would say, this is a mistake I see a lot of early career people make is when senior leaders ask for volunteers for things. It could be a nonprofit, it could be an event, it could be, whatever. Most people don't raise their hand. So this goes back to, how can I help you? Raise your hand, show up 30 minutes early, over deliver. And here's the thing, because we talked about closing the loop. At the end of it, always send a crisp one pager on postmortem, the key takeaways. Keep it crisp, keep it one pager and say, hey, senior leader, you didn't ask for this, but here are my top 5 to 7 takeaways and my 2 to 3 recommendations based on these insights I gathered. And if you do this again, or whenever the next event is, I would like to lead it. You do that 3 times, they're going to stop asking you, and they're just going to say, Jason's leading it. Wade is leading it. Yeah, that's what you want. You want your name to pop up when you're not in the room.
You've already thrown a lot of nuggets out here as through this conversation, but this is more a little bit personal to some degree, but like, what's the one principle that has constantly guided your career decisions, and why is it important?
It changes on the stage of my career. So I will share my current one because it's fresh in my mind. This comes from Naval Ravikant. And I recommend his book, The Almanac of Naval Ravikant. It's free. It basically teaches you about wealth and happiness. But he says, look for 3 traits in a business partner: high intelligence, high energy, high integrity, and do not compromise on any of them. The other thing, okay, so we could go deep on early career advice because it's probably one of my favorite. Here's something I love. This came from Toby Lutka, founder of Shopify. He's basically said, companies run on room temperature. It's up to the CEO, founders, and leaders to raise the temperature. And what he means by that is you raise the energy, you raise the tempo, you raise the bias for action for getting stuff done. So as a early career employee, you may not have the breadth of experience or the depth of experience or the tenure or the tenure of judgment. But what you do have is you have a lot of energy and you have working horsepower, right? You can work 24 hours a day. I mean, over exaggeration, et cetera. So leverage that, right? Most young 20-year-olds, they're time billionaires, but they just don't realize that. They don't realize that until they hit like 40, right? and then you're not a time billionaire anymore. But raise the heat. Be someone with a positive attitude, but still, a calm demeanor, but raises the energy and is seen as a go-getter that senior execs can rely on. Right? Roll up your sleeves and do the work that other people don't want to do.
I think it definitely makes them stand out from the crowd, right? Especially when you're coming on board new. And even I'd suggest, even when you're an intern, right? I mean, even though you are an intern, yes, triple check your work, right? So you don't have mistakes or mess ups, but definitely put yourself out there and go above and beyond, because that is almost your most important time to shine, right? To stand out against the crowd. So you will ultimately potentially get hired, or if you're both not amicable in that relationship, then depart and go and do something else. But there's one question I wanted to ask, right? Because you are very great at giving advice. And I know you also mentor, right? Through platforms like First Round Capital and Techstars. Like, what's the most common advice that you give to folks that are just starting out, if we haven't covered it already?
Okay, so there's a couple. Okay, so I'll answer this question directly first. The most common advice for an early career person is to I don't want to sound like a soapbox, but it's add as much value as possible. It really is, right? So now the key is, okay, so then the question is, well, how do I do that? First, you have to identify what is valuable to your team or the manager or your leader, et cetera. And then make sure you deliver on that. Because at the early levels, what they're trying to figure out is, are you reliable and can you deliver? So that's like level one, right? Then level two is, can I trust you to take on bigger scope? Okay, yes. Level three is, can I trust you to deal with cross-functional stakeholders outside of our team when I'm not in the room with you? Or are you going to make our team look like a fool, right? So that's the next level. And then the level after that is, do I trust your judgment to make bigger decisions, right? If we go back to a marketing example, it's, okay, you ran this campaign that was $100,000. Good job. Facebook campaign, you delivered, ROI was good. If I give you $1 million budget, can you handle that? And then if I give you a $10 million budget and I want you to decide how to spend the $10 million, do you have the judgment to do that? So that's where you want to go. If we have time, I have two tactical advice specifically for interns. Should I share?
Yeah, let's shoot it right now. I think it's right on point. Yeah.
Okay. For interns, what you want to do, so I have I'm not going to name who this person is, but this person is an engineer and they just got a full-time offer from one of the top tech companies. And I took this person exactly through this playbook and I said, do this for your 3-month internship. I guarantee it's going to work. So the first step is, before you start your internship, a month before, you probably already know who you're going to report to. So let's just call it your manager. Send them a proactive email and say, what you want to deliver the message is, I'm really excited to be on your team. I'm really excited about this company and I want to over deliver and make a difference. What are some things I can do now to prepare so I can hit ground day one running? Now, these are the responses you're going to get from that, let's just call it intern manager. It's either going to be, I love it. Here's a list of 10 things you can read, watch, do whatever to prepare. And now you're really prepared. You'll probably be prepared more than 90% of the interns. The other one is, oh, I'm so excited to have you. Don't worry about anything. Just enjoy your time. We'll talk day one. That's okay. But you've already set the tone that you're there, right? The other thing is you want to, so that's number one, tactical tip number one. Tactical tip number two is go in with a very simple onboarding plan if your manager does not provide you one. And it could be as simple as, hey manager, what's our top priority for this full internship, for the, let's call it 3-month summer internship? What's something I could help with you right now this first week? What you want to do is within the first 2 weeks, ideally first week of your internship, just deliver a quick win. And it could be something super simple. Like, hey, just put this list together. Oh yeah, easy, done. And then the third thing is, hey manager, who are 3 people you recommend I grab 15-minute one-on-ones with to better know their goals, their teams, how we work with them, and how I can help them? That's it, right? Now this is tactical tip number 3. This is where it really snowballs. Your manager's going to give you that list of 3. And it might be, peer managers, etc. Every person you meet, you ask the same last question. I really enjoyed meeting you. I'm a big fan of this company. I want to work here full time when I graduate. So you make your goals known up front. And then you say, who's one other person you recommend I meet with? You're going to meet someone new every week in your internship. Most interns they finish their internship not meeting more than 5 or 10 people. But this way, you're going to snowball. And then the key theme is Wade was the one who asked for it. So when people start to talk about interns, they're like, well, Wade delivered on this. Oh, I know Wade. I met with Wade last week. And Wade delivered on X for me. And you want that all to, develop your reputation, and it gets back to your manager. So when your manager has a stack rank of people to offer full-time roles to, Wade's going to be at the top of that. Now, this is assuming you deliver your work first, right? And then you do some things above and above. Yeah. So it's almost like 3 check boxes. You delivered what you were told. You went above and beyond to deliver more work. And guess what? People like Wade. And Wade has kind of developed a reputation. And we would like to see Wade back. That's how you land an internship, full-time job.
Extremely impactful. And I appreciate you sharing that with the listeners today, because I think a lot of folks listening can, ultimately land a job out of their internship right off of that advice, because it's a very strategic play, right? And like you said, at the third step, definitely snowballs everything, and your name will be known in the organization within those 3 months, right? And they'll see that impact. But I did want to kind of rewind and go back to a point that you mentioned earlier, right, on judgment. Now, for somebody that's new and is starting out, and they might be a little bit nervous, they're networking, they're getting their name known and established in an organization, taking on more responsibilities, growing their roles. But how can younger professionals sort of develop that know-how of judgment, right? So that they are representing and their department in a good light, but also building that trust over time.
Judgment, in my opinion, comes from if we look at the formula of judgment, it comes from there's an experience, there's learning, and then let's call it osmosis, where you're actually doing, right? So the key advantage that, let's just call it, early career people have is new technology. Specifically, diving deep into the details of new technology, knowing actually how to use the tools, right? Like, for example, if we use Riverside Podcast, a senior leader might know what Riverside Podcast is or the platform and what it does, but they might not actually know all the functionalities and settings to make it the best experience. But you as the early career person can. So the key is to build this judgment is you want to ideally pick a field or wave or topic or niche that is growing and will be important to your company or industry first, right? So for example, when I started my internships at this digital marketing for the Sony movies, Facebook ended up becoming quite a big deal, right? Since 2010. So, a lot of Facebook experts came up, agencies, etc. So if you were one of those early people who knew growth tactics at Facebook, or how to create movie pages that captured attention, or you knew how to get followership, etc., people are going to look to you. So this is the key. So go deep into technology or platforms that are important, and then have a strong point of view. And you must share that point of view when you're in the room. So you mentioned people who may be nervous or scared because they lack judgment. You may not know. So if you're in a room and you're talking about the topic that you have become a, let's call it, quote unquote, semi-expert on, and no one has a strong point of view, you can chime in. You may not chime in on what the strategy is, but you can chime in with an insight, right? And so what you want to do is, if you don't have the seniority or title, lead with data. And data comes in 2 points. There's the quantitative hard data, right? Hey, I believe Facebook mobile is important because of these data points, or et cetera. Or qualitative, that is actually also just as powerful. Also, a lot of people use anecdotal, right? Customer data. Hey, have we looked at partnering with this influencer? Because I've noticed that, 70% of the comments, they cite this type of influencer, right? For a movie, whatever, et cetera, whatever product. So what happens is, usually the more senior the person, they tend to be a little bit further away from the on the ground data and customer anecdotes. So you could be the one to funnel that. Again, be the voice of data, be the voice of the customer. So own that. And I guarantee you, if you come into those meetings prepared with that information, and then you state your point of view clearly and concisely, the senior executives will remember that. They'll be like, oh, hey, Kathy, Wade made a good point in that meeting. We have a follow-up meeting about this. Why don't you invite Wade and tell Wade to prepare with some more insights? That's what you want. So, look, I get it. Being nervous is a real thing. The best way to combat that and build your confidence is to go in prepared. And you don't need to make a big speech. You just need to here's the thing. When you're in a room, you want to make an impression on that room. So you don't want to be in 5 meetings and you don't say anything, because people will probably forget you. Add value to that meeting. And if you're unsure how to do it, you can have a pre-talk with your manager beforehand, like maybe a week before, whatever, right? Say, hey, manager, I know this meeting is tomorrow or 2 days from now about this topic. Here are 3 insights I've gathered. Are you okay if I share it? Because now, if you and your manager know each other and your manager knows that you're maybe hesitant and nervous, you can work with your manager and say, hey, manager, maybe can you give me a signal that I should talk, right? Your manager could say in the meeting, great point, Deborah. Wade actually has 2 insights that he found that he would like to share. And then just don't fumble the ball, right? So just
No, exactly. But I like that second part, right? Where you stated, if they are nervous, go speak to your manager, have that teed up, because then at least that way they clear space for you, right? And then you're not having to try and jump in the middle of a conversation, right? I know these online video platforms nowadays, you can raise a hand, etc. So you can do that too, but definitely try and find space for yourself. But we've covered a ton of information, so I did want to take a second to have you sort of walk through and potentially explain Level Up for those that are listening today.
Level Up is your source for executive insights, high performance habits, and then specific career growth actions. And it's run by, I help run it with my business partner, Ethan Evans. He's the secret sauce because Ethan is a retired Amazon vice president. He was there for 15 plus years. He has over 70 patents. He co-launched Prime Video, all these big products that we know of. So he's a wealth of insights. He's a 10x executive. So it's us putting out the career advice there. And we reach people through our newsletter. We also do courses, and we also have a Slack community. And at the time of this recording, we have over 900 members of highly ambitious professionals, all looking to rapidly grow in their careers of all disciplines: product, engineering, marketing, design, etc. And the whole purpose of Level Up is to pay it forward to the future leaders. Because, believe it or not, I guess it's not that surprising. One of the most common questions we get from people in general is, I don't have a good manager. My manager is unsupportive. My manager, some people use the word bad or poor, or they're like, I don't have a good manager. Help me. And you know what? It's not because many of these managers want to be bad. It's because if we think about this, most managers are actually never trained to be good managers, right? Yeah, very rare do companies train managers. So it's a lot of it is self-learning, YouTube, podcasts, reading, etc. Unfortunately, when you are a first-time manager without training, your team is the unfortunate guinea pigs. I know this because I was not trained well, and I definitely made blunders as a first-time manager. So that's where we want to pay it forward.
Where can people go to connect with you all for Level Up or you yourself, just to kind of maybe gather more information or join the community?
The best way is two things. Connect with me on LinkedIn, Jason Young. You'll find me there. And Level Up newsletter. We're on Substack. We publish weekly, a mix of fireside chats with experts, such as Fortune 500 CEOs, C-suites, founders of rocket ship startups. And one of my favorites recently was a Team USA Olympic champion. The guy is Justin Best. The guy, he's also an investment banker, right? So he does both. He is a beast. Talk about time management. Probably top 3 I've ever met in that regards. But yeah, so find us on there, and you'll get a lot of insights. Here's the best thing. On a weekly basis, we get private DMs, emails, talking about how people have seen success in their careers. Either promotion, new job, newfound satisfaction, happiness, raise, whatever. It's really rewarding. The key word, if I had to give 2, it's just 2. I'll just give 2 words. Number 1, ownership. Number 2, proactive.
I just want to share this with the listeners too. You all have actually sort of a pre-templatized email that a lot of people that are currently in the workforce could potentially send up to their managers or leaders in order to potentially get that covered by like continuous learning within an organization. That's correct, right?
Yeah, good catch. The expense template. Here's the mental model we like to use. Amazon had patented one click, like one click buy now. You want to make things for customers one click easy. So that's like a mental model we use.
I like that. And I think, people should take advantage of that. And I really appreciate how you all have that out there because, sometimes it's very cost effective, but I think, sometimes for folks, they get hesitant because they think, oh, now I got to take on this personal expense, but think through it, be smart, and you could expense it as continuous learning. And then you spoke about habits earlier, right? You guys develop high performance habits. So what's one practical habit or tool that you think every young professional should adopt today?
Young professional. It's hard because you have to be in control of your calendar for this, but I love calendar time blocking. Identify where you do your best deep work and try to reserve that for your deep work, meaning the time of the day, right? Morning, night, afternoon, whatever. It could be hard if you're put into meetings, etc. The other one is figure out where you get true motivation from. For some people, it's they had a big failure and they put that photo or rejection letter up on their wall and they look at it every day and they get motivated by that because they want to show them that they were wrong, right? Or some people see a big goal and they visualize it and they break it down into micro pieces. You could have that. I will say another technique. So I'm a father. I have a daughter who's 2.5. So my time management is very important. I try to go into mental modes, like character mode sometimes. When I'm with her, I'm dad mode, meaning I'm fully present, no phone, etc. So sometimes that can help you. I think the best example of this might be Kobe Bryant and Black Mamba, right? When he's on the court, he's Black Mamba, ruthless killer. He's gonna win.
It almost ties into the book Atomic Habits, right? Where they focus on setting up intentional environments. Say you have an office at home, right? And then you have like a couch, but then you have your desk. Maybe your desk is set up intentionally. That portion of your environment is set up for work, and that's where you can get into your flow. Or maybe you have your book on top of the couch because that's where you go to read and, kind of fill up your cup in that way. So I also just wanted to ask, right? You've been involved in tech and media organizations. So for the young career professionals today, how can they stand out in those highly competitive industries?
There's a few ways. Either you are so good at your job, you're truly the 1%. That's one way to stand out, right? The other way is, can you, what's the right way to say this? It's, can you build a platform for yourself? So for example, okay, so this is one tactical tip that I would recommend people do, especially early career, to rapidly grow. I think some people refer to this as the third door in that concept. But here's the thing. If you cannot get through the front door because you're not invited to that meeting, or you cannot get through the back door because you don't have the access, the third door is creating your own platform where you are the owner and thus you invite people. So how did I do this? Here's a good example, and it worked well for me. Early in my career, I think this was probably within the first 3 to 4 years of my career, maybe even earlier, so pretty young. One of the senior leaders was on the advisory board of a nonprofit for our industry. And they threw events, industry events, networking mixers, etc., breakfasts, blah, blah, blah. And then this leader asked for volunteers. I was one of a handful of volunteers to help run an event. As simple as check people in to the breakfast. That's it, right? Yeah, I can check people in. What's your name? What's your company? Great. Oh, nice to meet you. I'm Jason. You show up at 6:30 a.m. Most people don't do it. You do this a couple of times. And then what happened was you send that closed loop takeaway inside stock. And then I got an email and said, hey, the board meeting is tomorrow, 7 a.m., this location. Bring your one pager and present your insights to the board. You say, okay, yeah, done. So I did. They really liked it. And they said, hey, would you want to be a co-chair for this next event? We need some help. I'm like, what does a co-chair do? You get sponsors, you do the content, blah, blah, you get attendees. Yeah, I could do that. And then what I showed is I could get sponsors. That brings in money. So then they said, hey, would you like to be co-chair of this other event? So blah, blah. Anyways, you eventually become on the advisory board. And then you can pick. Now, this is where you get bold and you say, hey, I have a new idea. I have an idea for a new event. And I want to co-chair it with this person. Can I do it? So where this rapidly rise your career is because I had this platform, an event behind me, I could almost reach out to anyone in the industry because they're not going to talk to Jason, the early career professional, but they are going to help out this nonprofit organization that I just so happen to be co-chair of, right? So that's how I met a lot of people, and my name in the industry grew a lot. So you could do that. So to answer your question for those professionals is you could either find existing, let's call it, I don't know, communities, groups, affinity groups, whatever you want to call it, that fit your interests. A lot of it probably delves around networking, right? But figure out how you could be part of it. And then the next step is how you could start to lead it. Or if you really want to, start your own. That's harder, but you fully control it.
But it's an option.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's what you want to do. Because, yeah, unless your name is, I don't know, unless you're Tim Ferriss and you're big.
There's some messagings in there where, a lot of folks, there's a lot of organizations that are startups this day and age, right? And there's the age old of like, should I go with an organization that is big and established or go with a startup? I know you've kind of been a little bit in both. Do you have any thoughts or advice or tips on like what maybe individuals could do to insert themselves into startups if they're looking to go down that path?
Oh, this is a tough one. Startups or the big company. This is a really tough one. Okay, let's assume this early career person wants rapid career growth and they're highly ambitious and they're going to work, day in, day out. Okay, I got to be careful because it's not so 0 and 1. A good route is to try to get on a hyper growth startup. So what that means is a series B or C startup that has clear product market fit, and they're just growing like crazy because they're hiring, they're in the press a lot, they've so many customers, etc. Because once you just get on that rocket ship, you're just going to learn. And so you're going to wear a lot of hats, you're going to learn a ton. And one of the best ways to build a very vast, powerful network is to be on a high growth trajectory, because everyone around you is going to be in that ecosystem, right? So those are good. Big tech is always helpful because they have the credible name to it. Now, it depends what you want to do in your careers, right? Later on, because are you in a small, new, scrappy team at big tech? Or are you in the big, profitable business that's been around and you're doing incremental, but still critical, important updates, right? There's a difference in how you message and tell your story. So it depends on how you want to flex your skills and how you want to learn. The other part, if you just go to a pure play startup, let's say like very early, pre-product market fit, you just gotta, it's tough because you gotta just be willing to roll up your sleeves and do whatever it takes to help that company get product market fit. Now, how you get on the radar of those companies or those founders is ideally through referral, because that's who they're going to trust the most. So how do you get into that ecosystem? Well, you can help people there. You can help other founders. You can help early operators. Maybe you can help the venture capitalists or the investors. Or if you have a specific skill in marketing or PR, you can help those. It's basically, how do you help them? That's what they're looking for, because they're looking for generalists, but also domain experts in a specific field if they really need it. So it's how do you build that expertise and then showcase that you can help them. And that's where building in public can help. Like you with this podcast. That's a great example.
The building in public is a big thing, and I think even when we were talking about LinkedIn earlier, I think in younger individuals, I always mention to them as well, right? Like, don't be nervous to get on LinkedIn, even while you're in university or you're doing internships, because that is the best time where you're not really positioned as an industry expert at that present moment. So people are going to love to see what you're bringing to the market in the sense of posts, right? Are you learning something new? Are there different technologies or methodologies that you're learning? And what is your impact within the university atmosphere, right? And then show people that, right, on LinkedIn, and kind of foster those relationships early on versus when, once again, time is not on your side, right? But earlier on, you mentioned that, data and numbers tend to stand out on a resume. For those that are newer to their careers, right, in internships or in university, still going to be recent grads soon or are recent grads, how can they position their resume to have data points on it if they're having smaller internships or perhaps working in retail, right, as so many do?
Data is another word for impact. So what you want to show on the resume is your impact to whatever you did in a short amount of time, right? And if you're doing internships, the reviewer will know you did an internship. So it's usually time bound, and you have maybe a capstone project, etc. So what you want to do is, first, if you don't have the data, then you need to get that data, because no one just pays an intern to do nothing, right? So you have to know your output. I would say that's number one. But focus on the impact. So now we're an intern, because obviously the intern is not going to run the company, right? So you need to contextualize the data, and you could do that by benchmark proxies. So you could say, yeah, I helped increase the latency of X by 10%, and you could put in parentheses, beating benchmark by 50%. It just shows that you over delivered or you did something, right? Or you could say, I helped on this I was on a 3-person team for this digital marketing campaign using, let's call it Facebook ads. And we delivered, for a campaign of $10,000 budget, small, we delivered a 3.2 ROI, beating benchmarks by 25%. So what you want to do is you want to show that you had the impact, contextualized, because what you want the reader to, and then you can say like a little bit of how you did it. Right? Because anytime someone says, I beat the benchmark, the immediate next question in the interviewer or hiring manager is, how? Right? And then they want to know, well, can you do it for us? And then when you become a bigger leader, it's, can you teach the rest of the company to do it? Right? So that's where you want to think. So it's almost like you're giving them like a appetizer on your resume. That's what you want, because you want them to say, let's say you're interviewing me. I want Wade to say, hey, Jason, at this internship, you said you delivered X and over benchmark. And you said you did X, Y, Z. Can you tell me more about that? That's really interesting. And they're like, yeah, Wade, I would love to tell you. This is what I did, Yeah, so that's what you want to do.
I think sometimes folks get lost in that, right? And identifying that impact, but then also stating how they did it. But then interviewers will ask, how can they get it done sort of in their organization? Should the younger professionals, when being interviewed, respond accordingly in such a fashion that they try and relate it to the organization that they're applying to?
Yeah, I think, I would say as much as you can relate. So if you can, so this goes in the bold part, like in an interview, what you can insert, and I get it. So interviews are time bound, so you don't have that much time. But if you're getting into a good jive with the interviewer and you've picked up that they really like something you did, you can build on it and say, and I know you have X product coming up, or I know you go after X B2B software companies or whatever, or X movie coming up. I think you could insert really short, concise, tactical recommendation to that product. Because they're either going to say, ooh, very interesting, tell me more, right? And that's just a really good sign. Or they're going to say, great thought. I do want to cover the rest of my questions so I could, blah, blah, blah. But either way, it's fine. But you want to show that you're thinking about their company. So yes, 100%. A good relation, a good data point that you could tie back is if you share almost similar customers. Then you could say, yeah, when I marketed this podcast, we went after this type of cohort. I know you have that cohort too. This is a suggestion I would have that we could test, or if I started here in my first week, I would look into this. You could pose it that way too.
Yeah, that's spot on. And I think that ties nicely into your point earlier about creating your own platform or finding your own way into the room, right? And that's kind of one of the segues you can by having that industry expertise to then help that organization with what you've done in the past, right? And go after it. But
can I add one more thing? Because I love this topic, and I the early career is probably one of my most fascinating cohorts that I like speaking to. Early career people or university students on LinkedIn. When you share your comments on other people's, you can start by saying, as a university student or as a student at X university, I've seen this data point, or here's what my fellow students are talking about. Because, especially with executives, because a lot of senior executives actually do reverse mentoring, meaning a lot of them actually find a mentor who is younger than them, like Gen Z or Gen Alpha, right? Because I guarantee you, a lot of senior executives are not on TikTok. They're not on, Instagram, et cetera. Maybe Instagram by this time, but the new technology. Or now, I don't know how many of them are actually using Perplexity, ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini, all these things on a daily basis. So if you could position yourself that way, they would be like, oh, you can always teach someone something. Now, what would be really interesting, I would love to see someone do this. Who's the bold person that's going to listen to this podcast and do this? You can own, I think it's Gen Alpha. Maybe they're too young, or Gen Z. Let's just go with one of them, right? Okay. I would love for one of them who is on the ground and not some big fancy research company with senior level people. I would want one of these people in that cohort to start like the Gen Alpha or Gen Z trends report, insights. And it doesn't have to be fancy. It could just be, right? It could just be interesting things that your cohort is talking about that you think big companies probably want to know, And just put it out there. Honestly, just put it out there. And so the question is, how do you get that data? You can interview your cohort of students, and you could do surveys. You don't need a huge sample size, right? Actually, if you look at all these like studies that get the headlines, and you look at the sample size, sometimes it's like 1,000 people. right? You're like, well, I thought this was a big company. How is it not a million people, right? So you don't need huge, but what you need to show is you have on the ground access to an interesting cohort that marketers want in this case, and that you can, what you really want to show is that you're the type of person who can derive interesting insights. And that's where like a pithy, bolded headline would start. Like insight one sentence, followed with some data points and maybe like a recommendation. Insight two, and you don't, this deck, I say a deck or a report, it could be like 3 pages.
Even for those that are on campus, right? I mean, right now in universities, you don't even have to go search. I mean, these large organizations pay people, they have to hunt them down. I mean, you can just go and connect with different departments in the university or just walk around with a flyer, right? Or have a QR code and say, take the survey, you know, whatever it might be. But yeah, I think that'd be phenomenal because I think even large organizations would chomp at information like that, right? Because they're not in it day to day like those students are. So yeah, maybe someone listening to this might start it out.
I will, if you do, send it to me. Send it to Wade and me on LinkedIn because we would love to see it. You know, it's always, you could pick any category, right? Beverages. You know, they might be going away from certain beverages into others for health reasons or whatever.
Yeah, like even on, you know, you see this big uptick right now with even a side note, but you look at sort of the like unhealthy foods or alcoholic beverages, like there tends to be a decline because folks are starting to pull away. And it's those kind of data points, but for Gen Z and Gen Alpha that companies are going to want to latch onto big time.
You know what could be really interesting if someone took, so let's say someone took this idea, what you could get really niche, meaning you could do, what do Gen Alpha what does Gen Alpha really think about X marketing, right? Because here's something interesting. Big companies spend a lot of money and resources marketing and positioning. But if you could tell them, hey, this group of Gen Alpha actually thinks this part of the marketing just stinks. Like, why are you doing this? It's irrelevant. It doesn't make any sense. Blah, blah, blah. Here's a suggestion. That would catch some eyes, you know? That could be interesting.
It really would. And that's your bold move.
Yeah, right? Yeah. For anyone who's in that, yeah. Now, this was fun. I love this topic.
Yeah, no, this is great. But Jason, I appreciate it. I know we're a little over time, but this is exceptional, and I appreciate you delivering. I think that's the theme for this podcast episode is value. You've definitely delivered a ton for the younger generation. Any sort of last closing words or ideologies or anything you'd like to bring across the table?
Be proactive. Find out what really interests you and motivates you, but also what you're good at. It cannot, like there's the whole, I'm getting on a soapbox right now. There's the whole find your passion. That's not enough. You got to be really good at it, and it's got to be something of value. Now, sometimes people don't know that that is something that they want to value. Okay, that could happen, but try to just add a lot of value to people. Ideally, it's something that you're interested in, and build your network now. And that doesn't mean you go to every single networking event and blah, 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 but you could build a network just by providing value to others because people will remember that. And if you think about it long term, try to find some way to mechanize it and keep track of it. It could be a Google Doc, Sheets, whatever, something simple. But just a way to keep updated, at least with people that you want to stay in touch with. Because if careers span decades, but many people think of the next 3 to 5 years, right? 20 years will go by fast. You could do a lot in 25 years. And the other thing to remember is, okay, fine. Here's the like the sum up takeaway. You want to play positive sum games with long-term people and be really proactive about it. That's the summary. I will have to add one more thing.
Absolutely.
Have a point of view. Early career people always go in having a point of view. You don't want to be just head nodding all the time or saying yes and just doing what you're told, because then you might be seen as a tool, and tools are replaceable. You want to be someone who has a point of view and has recommendations. Here's I guess the last tactical tip. Almost any well, you got to use your judgment when appropriate, but almost any email you send to your manager or to a team or etc., make sure your recommendation and point of view is clear. Because you want people to think Wade has really good opinions about this, not Wade just does what he's told. I mean, there's a degree where that's helpful, but you kind of want both, right? But as you grow, if you want rapid career, okay, here's a quick list. Have a point of view, be proactive, add value to your network now, be unafraid to take bold risks. And here's a big one, probably more relevant when people are further in their careers. Be really good at deal making with people. What I mean by that is you can say, I will over deliver on X, but I want Y in return. You want to make it win-win. You want to make it fair, and you want to make it, all boats rise with the tide. But you want to be clear that if you're going to work really hard and give up some stuff and reprioritize things, what do you want out of it? I will say I get a lot of reach outs, and people ask for a lot, but sometimes the thing that frustrates me is I know they want something, but they're just not very clear what they want. But for me as a recipient, if you tell me what I'm going to benefit from it and what you want in return, I can make a quick judgment call. So do all those things early in your career, but as you grow, as you work with more stakeholders and cross-functional people, make deals.
I like that. I like that rounding out. I jotted those down, and I'll probably have to put it in a list and then shoot it back over to you. But yeah, maybe we'll turn that into a little guide for folks, and have it up there for them. But also, you have a podcast yourself, correct?
We have Ethan's YouTube channel.
What can people find on your YouTube channel? And is it Level Up or is it Ethan Evans? Where can they go and find it?
I think it's Ethan Evans VP is like the channel name. But yeah, it's all Level Up content, but just in video form.
That's great. Yeah. I mean, the younger generation definitely consumes video a lot more. So that's phenomenal. I appreciate you sharing that.
I'll share our most popular videos on YouTube are Ethan does live executive coaching with clients. People like that because, you really don't see executive coaching public, right? Because they're usually pretty quiet. And you get to see how Ethan executive coaches, and you get to learn alongside his client. That's one. He also does these career talks about specific topics like, here's a few of my favorite. Executive one-on-ones and how to do them well. Or how being unreasonable drove Ethan to VP at Amazon. That's a really good one. There's a balance between being unreasonable as a leader and being irrational. You don't want to be irrational, but one of the ways you raise the bar is by being, somewhat unreasonable. And then our fireside chats with guests. I will say, you talked about like young people and going to startups. What you want, because if you look at your career as like on a resume or LinkedIn, something about startups that you can always share is the chaos experience. That's what you want to showcase. I learned this from my friend D. Murthy. He's running a rocket ship startup right now. They just raised a Series C. They're killing it. But I asked him, what do you look for in people joining your especially people from bigger companies? He says, chaos experience. Were they able to survive in a chaotic startup experience? Because if you can do that, you can almost survive in any environment.
But that's true. It's the ebb and flow, and it's the balance, right? Because there is that element of chaos within startups where, like you said, you're learning a lot, you're doing a lot, and you're pushing the envelope most of the times. But it's an interesting take because not many people will identify with that, right? Especially even early on in their careers, because they would just be yes men, right? Or yes people, I should say. But I was referencing the movie. But yeah, a lot of times people say yes.
Yeah, don't just say yes. There's a time and place to just get stuff done. But yeah, have a point of view. And, a lot of startups fail. That's just the truth. So if you go to a startup or two and it fails, what, your life is not over, but you need to show what you delivered. Because unless you're the founder, it's not just on you, right? So you need to be able to pivot that into learnings and then showcase the next company what you can do for them.
Yeah. Yeah. Because they, like you stated before, they ultimately want that same impact within their organization that you did at your prior one. So,
Exactly. It's all about impact. The root cause is impact.
yeah, no, that's great. I like that. It should become a little bit of a slogan, the root cause is impact.
It always is. Yeah, it's whenever most people ask, why am I not getting promoted or why am I not getting the visibility I want? It's usually because you're not working on what really matters to them, to the managers or leaders. Yeah, yeah. And so here's the thing. It's not always just money, right? There are different ways you could show impact. It could be, are you making customers' lives better? Because without customers, you're not going to get money. Are you saving money, right? Like here's a good example. Data insights, that team or person or, professional, they're not directly responsible for money, but are your insights turning into recommendations that are helping drive, the business leaders, et cetera. So you could do that.
Jason, I appreciate your time. This has been so valuable, and I'm excited to, for the younger listeners to get all of this value and then try and implement it into their lives. And, hopefully we'll see some folks come over to Level Up, because I think it's important, even for that younger generation, to kind of get insight into the mentality and the goings on of executive leaders as well.
If you listen to this podcast and you take action on this advice, ping me on LinkedIn and ping me and Wade, 3, 6, 18 months from now, showing us and close the loop with what you've done. Because you'll have success. This was a lot of fun.
Thank you, Jason. I really appreciate your time.